We've got a great one here for episode 9. Current 505 world champion Mike Martin is my guest today on the 505 cast. Enjoy.
Recording. I think this is episode 9 of the 505 cast, which is way farther than I thought this thing would ever go when we started it. But today, another big episode. We have current Rolex co-yachtsman of the year and reigning 505 world champion helm Mike Martin with us. Mike, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Hey, it's my pleasure, and thanks for doing this. I really enjoy watching these, so thanks so much for putting the effort into making these happen.
Thanks. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great. So do you remember a guy named Brian Self from high school?
Yeah.
So
yeah. How do you know him?
So this is a funny thing. I was building a bunch of buildings. I was a commercial project manager and working in DC. And you know, it's one of these. He found out that I sail, and he's like, "You don't happen to know a guy named?" And it turns out that you guys had gone to what, Episcopal high school together?
St. Stephen's is the name of our school. Episcopal was our rival. How dare you say that?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, which leads into you didn't exactly grow up in an absolute hotbed of sailing, right? Like Alexandria, Virginia.
No, not at all. And so a lot of people have probably heard this story, but yeah, the first time I went sailing was in a snark. I don't know if most people even know what a snark is, but it's this classic styrofoam, boat. Some of them said cool cigarettes on the side.
If you bought enough cigarettes, you got a snark.
Yeah. So when I was, 9 or 10 or something, my sister went through the I want a horsey stage. And so, they sent her to horse riding camp, and you're not just going to send one kid to camp. So I got sent to horse riding camp as well. And I didn't really get along with the horses, and they didn't think much of me. So they had a little pond at this camp with a little snark, and I'd just sail around in the snark all day. And was there. My next summer, my parents bought me just learn to sail lessons on the Potomac River, and I learned to race there, and I learned to sail there, and then I just bought a laser and sailed in the local laser fleet against all the adults, and that's where it started. And actually, that's how I got my first 505 ride. There was another St. Stephen's alumni, a guy named James Jacobs, who sailed lasers and then got a 505, and then I crewed for him in a 50. So that's the first time I ever sailed a 50.
So was that actually on the Potomac?
That's a good question. I don't know if we actually sailed it on the Potomac River. I know we did races around the Chesapeake Bay.
Right.
But I don't know if we ever sailed it out of Washington Sailing Marina, which is one of the all-time worst places to sail.
I've done a bunch of windsurfing out of the Washington Sailing Marina, and you come back smelling like jet fuel. And I absolutely demolished a skeg on what was not yet famous to me, but is now very famous to me, row of shopping carts that are like in line with one of the runways. It's a treacherous place that it's awesome that people of your caliber can come out of places like that. It speaks to the draw of sailing. So from there you went to you sailed at ODU, right?
That's right.
And while you were there,
so
you won a laser NAs while you were,
go ahead.
You won a laser NAs while you were in school, right?
Yeah. So I sailed there, and when Gary Bodie was the coach, who was also a 50 sailor, and he recruited me, and the team was sort of just developing when I got there.
Huh.
And but then we, by the time I graduated, we had a really good team. We won the Fowl Trophy my senior year. So I won the single-handeds that year. We won the dinghies, the sloops. I don't know if they won the women's or not, but yeah, we had a pretty good team by the time I left. And yeah, I won the the laser NAs I won in '85, and then I won the college single-handeds in '88 or '89.
Right on. So was that that must have been like battling Sam Kerner, right?
Yeah. Sam Kerner was he was the other heavy air animal in those days.
Right. So I have a story why I hold a particular grudge against Sam, but it's absolutely inappropriate for anything that's going to be on the internet at any time. So we'll leave that for another day. But he was on the team used to come and stay at my house, and I was I was a kid in high school and doing stupid kid in high school things, and Sam was a good dude, and I enjoyed the small amount of time I had in school with him. But beating him and everybody else must have been something special.
Yeah.
So
those wins are good.
I'd always associated Gary with Navy, and I mean, like, I thought he popped out of the womb and was like a fully formed coach at the Naval Academy. So he must have switched like right then. Was he still at ODU when you were a senior?
No, so Gary, you got to give him credit. The sailing program at ODU was nothing. It was when he came there and he started it from scratch and got the sailing center built, at least half of it, the big barn that you can wheel the boats in and out of, and recruited a guy named Casey Fulmer, who was an All-American, and some other people, and then recruited me and a couple other people, Charlie Ogletree, and then after my freshman year, he left and went to Navy.
Okay.
And then we had an interim coach of 1 year, a guy named Bill Kofer, who's a local that volunteered. And big thanks to him for putting in the effort to do that. And then Casey Fulmer became our coach.
Okay, got it. Right on. Okay. And did you get to go 5-0 sailing with Gary at all? He's a big 5-0 sailor. Did he have a boat there while you were there or anything?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I only went sailing with Gary once or twice, just cruising around there. But it's funny, he had his boat in the sailing center, and if you look at the sailing center at Old Dominion, there's a big sliding door that the boats slide in and out of, and when you raise the door all the way, it's like 8 feet taller than a FJ mast, and it's like, well, why did you need such a tall door? And the answer is so you can get a 5-0 rig in and out.
Perfect.
So that's why the door is the height it is at Old Dominion.
Perfect design. That's great. So, so you graduate college and you're the single-handed champion, and of course at that time the obvious choice is to go into fin sailing, right?
Yeah, so actually I did most of my, I did half of my fin sailing in school and sort of half out. Lasers weren't in the Olympics yet.
Right.
And so if you wanted to do an Olympic campaign, fin was the boat. And so I had to bulk up and gain a lot of weight, and I did the trials in '88 and '92.
All right. And
so '88, then Marblehead, and I was still in school. And then '92, I was actually working in Virginia for a company called Canon Business Machines. So Canon, like a camera company.
Yep.
And they had a facility out in Costa Mesa, and the fin trials were in Newport Beach at Balboa Yacht Club. So I transferred out here to do the '92 fin trials, and haven't moved back to the East Coast since.
Yeah. So last time we heard Howard's perspective on the story of Macy recommending you to Howie, and he called you up and didn't really know who you were at all. And said, you're too small. So, you know, in a sliding door thing, like if Howie doesn't have that moment where he needs a crew for that regatta in Richmond, like what would you have been doing? What had you been doing at that point when the phone rang back up?
Yeah, so yeah, that was like in, I don't know what year that was, you know, that was probably like 92 or 91 or 92 or something, I don't know, or 93, it's sometime around there. And yeah, his story isn't totally accurate. What he actually said was, "Oh yeah, I'm sailing with Steve Rosenberg on the set. Thanks anyway."
Okay.
And that was it. And it was like, okay, well, so much. I guess I'll go do something else. And so yeah, I mean, I was still sailing the Finn through '92, and then after that, I'm actually a little small for the Finn, and I had to wear 44 pounds of weight, and then they banned the weight bottles in '92, and I was non-competitive at that point. So I sold the Finn, and I bought a windsurfer. So I guess I'd just be windsurfing.
All right.
And just doing that, or yeah, who knows what I would have done.
Which brings us, we'll shelve a topic for what you're doing for the next couple of weeks, but we'll stick with 5-0s for the moment here. So then you start sailing with Howie, and was that sort of you guys did that one regatta and you won it, and like, oh cool, this is great, let's go full speed?
Yeah, so I think that was after the Finn trials, and like I said, I've been bulking up and force feeding for 7 years, and I was just really tired of stuffing my face, and so I did lose a bunch of weight. Just I could eat normal, so I kind of dropped to my normal weight, which is a little light for crewing. And yeah, the first regatta we sailed was up in Richmond, and I do have a funny little story about that regatta. I didn't really know Howie, and so we drive up there, and he's a unique individual, and so it was after the big earthquake in San Francisco, and a bunch of the freeways had fallen down,
right?
And so the normal way to Richmond didn't exist anymore, and so it just exited you off the freeway into Richmond proper, which is not the best neighborhood,
right?
And so now we're driving around Richmond, lost. These two white guys in their Volvo station wagon towing their sailboat. And we get to this intersection, and there are these guys hanging out on the curb, drinking their whatever out of their paper bags at, 9 a.m. And Howie rolls down the window and goes, "Ask these guys directions to the yacht club." I'm just like, we're gonna get shot.
Well, that was the Commodore and the Vice Commodore sitting right there. So you probably had a
yeah.
Cool.
So we didn't ask him for directions, and somehow we found the yacht, and we went to the regatta and we won the regatta. And then after that, he asked me to sail only in light air regattas, and I asked him, "How come you never asked me to sail on St. Francis?" He said, "Oh, you're too small." But actually, I bought a 5.0 myself to drive 771, and I sailed with Pete Melvin for a year, and then we did quite well. But we were actually going to go to the Worlds in Townsville, and about a week before the event, he got in a catamaran accident and shattered his kneecap.
Ugh.
And so I sailed with Miller, and then but then after that, we kept all leading up to that, just availability of crews and drivers. We wound up training with each other all the time, and then we got to the point. It's like, well, we're training together all the time. Why don't we just sail? Why don't we just race together?
Right.
And that's when we started really racing together in earnest.
And that was sort of at the genesis of the whole Team Tuesday Edition 1.
Yeah, so I don't know. I can't remember how he told this story, but we're driving back from some regatta, and Howie was telling me how he, creates goals for every year. And their business goals and personal goals. And one of his goals was to win the 505 Worlds. And I was like, well, yeah, that's a nice goal, but what are you doing to achieve it? Like you can't just write it down. You gotta take action to do it. And he kind of looked at me and said, well, what do I need to do? And I said, like, well, we need a training program. We need tuning partners. We got to go out and practice on a regular basis. And of course, Allie, being the unguided missile, right? You give him some guidance and just off he is. And, next thing you know, he's got like recruited 3 other teams and we're all set and we're start Team Tuesday.
That's pretty good. Can't be that. So, coming right off of he had a lot of good thoughts about the FD team from the 84, sort of providing a lot of the groundwork for how those guys work together and what they did in that. But the Finn team at the time you were sailing was also like super good. Were you guys doing a lot of that kind of stuff among the Finn team, or was it all like let's stab each other in the back kind of crap?
Yeah. No, it was probably neither, right? There definitely wasn't a stab yourself in the back. We were definitely all good friends, and we would, house together and train together. I don't know that people were telling their, innermost secrets on how to go fast,
right?
But we all got along pretty well, so it was good that way. And I think that Team Tuesday philosophy of sharing all the information, I think, Howie had that philosophy from talking to the 84 guys, but I think also, Jay and Peasy coached us a lot, and they had that same philosophy.
Okay.
And I think a lot of credit should go to them for really instilling that into that Team Tuesday deal. And especially, like when we started, we just brought these teams in from all sorts of places that didn't have a bunch of 5.0 experience. And so the goal is to get them, like you got to get them fast,
right?
So that we have someone to tune against. And yeah, so that's sort of where it started.
Cool. So we're at, maybe 96 now that you guys start sailing together a lot. And then you had a close call at the 98 Worlds. And then you go to France in 99 and you finally bust through. So how did that, like what was different that time? What put you over the top?
Yeah, so that was interesting. And a lot of it had to do with that Team Tuesday. We got some people into the class, and we got Andy Beckman and Ben Benjamin sailing together.
Right.
And they were right out of college and, very good competitive college sailors and just great naturally talented sailors. And they were really quick downwind. And this is actually still with the small kites. And the big thing and we were really actually fortunate. We thought we were unlucky because all spring we were training and it wasn't very windy. It was sort of this marginal wire. Sometimes you wire, sometimes you don't, kind of, conditions. And we were like, oh, we need some big breeze. And people were saying Quiberon was going to be windy. But those guys were super fast downwind. And one of the techniques, one important thing was when to wire and when to not in the transitions in between.
Right.
And the other one was when it wasn't wire, was sailing super deep, board all the way up, twisty main, kind of by the lead, and transitioning in and out of those modes, and just racing against each other and pushing each other. We both got very fast in that condition, and then lo and behold, Quiberon comes around, and it's exactly that condition. And those guys were super fast upwind. I sold them my old boat, so they were in 777-1, which that boat for a while won a quarter of the world's races it started after over like 3 or 4 worlds.
Wow.
And they rounded like 4 or 5 weather marks in first place in that regatta. And then our big move was downwind against them and against Wolfgang Hunger and Holger Jess. And either running deep or transitioning wire back and forth, and we just made huge gains downwind. And yeah, and actually I think we only sailed, four or five races. And the first ones were all seconds. So we had straight seconds and the rest of the fleet was scattered everywhere. And then finally we managed to win a race. And then we actually won that regatta sitting on the beach. I guess in the sailing instructions, it said there can only be one race the final day. And the penultimate and penultimate day, there was no wind at all. And we just sat on the beach and they abandoned. And yeah, and Howie asked, the second day is like, so if they abandoned today, is that good or bad for us? And I kind of think about it. I'm like, if they abandon today, we win, right? Because we don't sail. That was the fifth race. We just dropped that race and we have a 2-2-2-1.
Right.
And so actually they abandoned the race at 6 p.m. on the last day, and then we won the world. So it was an interesting way to win. But
yeah, well, a win's a win. And
yeah,
that was in the pink boat, right?
that was in the pink boat. Yep, Spaceman Spiff.
That's a cool looking boat. I like that boat. So fast forward a little bit, and I've quit jobs, I've broken up with girlfriends, I've broken up with a wife, but I've never broken up with somebody who I pretty recently won the worlds with. How did that conversation all go down?
Yeah, so like I said, when I bought 777-1, I originally planned on driving. I'd always been a driver, and I crewed in 5.0s too, but most of my sailing was driving. And also, again, for Quiberon and all the years leading up to it, I had to really try to gain a lot of weight.
Right.
And so, yeah, no one had ever won the world in both ways. So I figured, well, what the hell, I'll give it a whirl. And we had just bought 8714. And so, yeah, and we had, there were multiple boats in the US. And so, we had a couple boats and so, yeah, I figured I'd give it a shot. So as we all know, the most important part of 5.0 sailing is finding a good crew. So I called up Steve Bordeaux, who I knew from laser sailing, and obviously an excellent sailor and Olympic medalist, and he was coaching at Stanford at the time, and said, hey, you want to sail 5.0s? And he was in. So we teamed up, and yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Right. And you guys came out of the gate pretty hot. Like you were third or fourth in your first worlds that you went to as a driver, right?
Yeah. So I mean, obviously it started. We had some figuring out to do in the beginning, and then I remember that year we had that would be in 2000, or I'm trying to remember. The first year we sailed together. Anyway, the PCCs and NAs were back to back, and on the West Coast, and Howie just beat us in the PCCs, and then Steve and I just beat Howie in the NAs. So that was sort of like the inflection point was
right.
was between those two regattas. And then we went to South Africa for the Worlds, and again, not a lot of races. He was usually blowing 50 there, but in the moderate air days we actually got to race, and I think we won the. I don't know. I think the first day was pretty windy, and Krister won the race, and I don't know what we were fifth or something. And then we won the next two races in sort of medium air, and then we wound up second overall. So yeah, I mean, Krister sailed great and was super fast, and was definitely quicker than us. And I hadn't really figured out how to go fast in the breeze yet. So yeah, we were second, which was a pretty respectable finish for first driving worlds.
I would say. And for anybody who's not aware of Krister, Krister is Krister Bergstrom, who I think is a 5-time world champion or something like that. Certainly one of the goats of the
legend.
class for sure. um, so on the topic of you hadn't yet figured out to go fast in heavy air, well, that sure changed. And the first worlds that you won as a driver was in 2009 with Jeff Nelson, and it was just rooting in San Francisco the whole time. But you were not yet a San Franciscan. So how did you prep to be so fast in that worlds when that wasn't your natural venue?
Yeah, so yeah, Jeff and I mean, we put a lot of effort in. We started sailing together in like 2002 or something, and is that right? No, I don't know. 2006. It's hard to remember the years, but yeah, we put quite a few years in together and did a ton of training together. And I complained that there was no wind before Quiberon, but we had pretty good windy conditions in Tuesdays for a couple of years. Generally, it's 15 to 18 there, and so you kind of can figure out how to get the boat going. And then that year, 09, we just the whole West Coast fleet, we've scheduled a ton of regattas in San Francisco, and usually out at TI, and we did a ton of training out at TI. And I remember there's a guy named Zach Berkowitz, who later I sailed 14s with, who was actually the weatherman in San Francisco. And so like before we come up and train, I'd call him like, Zach, we're going to come up there to train in breeze. Is it going to be windy this weekend? And after about the third time I did that, he's like, Mike, it's San Francisco. It's always windy. Just come up.
That's awesome. So this must be a different channel than Zach is the weatherman on, but one of my funniest memories, also one of the scariest memories, is the daughter of one of the weather people in San Francisco. She's a woman. Her daughter was in an opti clinic that I taught on the city front a long time ago, and the sailors are all coming back into St. Francis up through the marina, and I think it was like the NARS were coming back in from a day of sailing, and they were not really being super with giving the right of way to the 9-year-olds who didn't really know what was going on yet. And this girl got so freaked out by an oncoming NAR that she abandoned her boat, jumped in the water. And I was like, oh my, totally the wrong thing to do. No. But yeah, so I guess you have a lot of weather people in San Francisco, which they can tell you it's always windy. So that's fun. And then the following year, in an interesting sort of career thing or life development, you do become a San Francisco win, involved with the America's Cup.
Yeah, so that was, several people asked me, it's like, how do you get that job? So my title was Director of Rules and Umpiring for AC4. And, people say, how did you get that job? And I think, it's not in a traditional way. So we were driving back from some regatta, and the regatta director was Ian Murray, who we know well from Australia and sailing 18s, and we stay with him when we're down there. And he just called him and says, oh, and he's a guy with very few words, and he's like, I got a job for you. And I go, oh yeah, what's that? And he says, I want you to run the rules and umpiring for the Cup. And I said, well, that's great, but I'm not an umpire. And he goes, yeah, exactly. Like, we want to do everything different. We want to rewrite the rules. We don't want to umpire the traditional way with boats. We want to make it fast, exciting. We need to track the boats electronically. And I'm a product development engineer by profession. And so it's like, well, yeah, once in a lifetime opportunity. So yeah, I said, sure. Quit my job. I was making surgical devices for retina surgery in Irvine. And so yeah, I quit that job and joined up with the American Cup and moved to San Francisco.
All right. And so was that like were you sort of, you know, in the 10,000 foot view of like overseeing a product team to do the telemetry and all that
Yeah.
stuff and writing the rules and like, I mean, that's a lot to put together.
Yeah, there's plenty to do, you know, and it's a very interesting job because, like, you know, one day you'd be meeting with the heads of programs to agree on what the rules are, and then the next day you're crawling under a dirty container running cables. But yeah, so, you know, just the way it all works is the data, the positional data, was being acquired anyway because it was necessary for the graphics. So Stan Honey was in charge of ACTV, or the technology for ACTV.
Right.
And yeah, talking to him, it's like, well, you know, that's what we figured out. Oh, you have this positional data that's accurate to 2 centimeters and updated 10 times a second. Like, we can use that for umpiring. So then I sort of architected how that would all work. A guy named Graham Wynn in the UK actually wrote the code for it. And obviously it took a few iterations, as did the rules. I think the rules that we sailed with in the Cup was revision 21 of the rules. So yeah, you know, because we had a 3-year run up and all the World Series events, and we, you know, everyone had an open attitude, and we're going to try this out, and we're going to make some changes and try some things, and some are going to work and some aren't. And so it's great. I mean, for the regular racing rules to go through 20 iterations, you know, that would take,
It'd be like 180 years or something.
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
20
So,
Olympic cycles.
Yeah. So it was, it was really good to develop all that stuff. And yeah, it gave me a really good understanding of the rules. And obviously, you know, another part of it was hiring the umpires and who are, you know, officiating and you know, getting them up to speed on the new rules and using the technology. But just in talking to them about rule situations and you know, the regular rules and our rules, you know, gives you a really rock solid understanding of the rules, and it was a great experience.
Right. So as the boats kind of developed and started flying more and more, was that like, were there situations that were kind of becoming apparent that you were going to see that previous iterations of the rule hadn't yet foreseen, or like what was driving most of the changes in the rules?
You know, it was to make it spectator friendly and make it easier to understand, and for fast boats. And you know, there's a couple of examples I like to use. One is we got rid of the tacking rule. And we were pretty concerned when we were doing it, like, what are we not considering here? What are we missing?
Right.
And we asked, you know, some of the most senior umpires and judges, and it's like, so why do we have this rule? Like, let's say you're a clear ahead boat on 2 boats on port, you're clear ahead, you have the right of way, you tack to starboard. Why do you lose your rights in this 45-degree window and then gain it back when you're on starboard? What's the point there? Like, why do we have that?
Right.
And the answer I usually got was, well, that's the way it's always been.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, well, let's just get rid of that rule.
An engineer's favorite justification for anything.
Talking to the umpires. Yeah. And like, you know, rule 17 is when you establish an overlap from behind, and
right.
Talking to the umpires, you know, that's like one of the most called rules and one of the hardest to interpret. And it was just an area of, you know, it was a problem area. And in the fast boats, it's, you know, and except for pre-start, it's not going to happen. You're just not going to sail up through someone's gas, right? Because your gas is always coming back. up,
Right.
one, and down. You're not going to sail through someone's gas, so we got rid of that. And then we actually introduced a new rule. There's you can ask for room to tack and regular sailing, but there's no such thing as room to jibe. And because you can just, they assume the boats can sail dead downwind, and you have two boats, and you can't shove them into the rocks. You have to give them room on a continuing obstruction. But that's not, we didn't want people sailing dead downwind. I mean, it's slow and it's actually not safe in a cat. So, like we have boundaries and zones and room to jibe within the zone. And so, yeah, there was stuff like that we did to sort of make the racing better and more exciting and keep the boats going fast. And
Cool. And then you just decided I like San Francisco, I'm going to stay here.
Yeah, so yeah, it's funny, the cup ends and it's truly a 24/7 job. I actually never sailed less than when I worked for the cup.
Huh.
And then, yeah, it's just like it ended, and you're just sort of like, we're trying to, reset and figure out what you're going to do. And Stephanie, my wife, found a job in San Francisco already. And so she was working up here, and I was kind of set up here, and I'd started foil kiting, and so yeah, we're just like, oh, we'll just hang here for a while, and yeah, we're still here
10 years later. That's good. So then
yeah.
you sort of unzip the suit of that experience. You're now in San Francisco, and did you start sailing with Adam kind of right then, or when does Adam fold into this picture?
Yeah, I'm trying to think when Adam and I first started sailing together. So I knew Adam just from sailing in general. He used to actually drive a 5.0, and so I knew him. And then he was sailing his Moth, and I'd see him at regattas here and there. And I kept saying, you should sail with me. You should crew with me in the 5.0. And then finally, I think, he realized in the Moth that most of the Moth sailing was international, and there wasn't really a local fleet, and he couldn't go sailing locally or even nationally. And so, he sold his Moth, and he was looking for something else. And he said, yeah, finally I asked him once, and he said, yeah, let's try that out. And yeah, we started sailing together. And obviously, I mean, he's 6'6", 200. It doesn't get much better physically, and he's a very good tactical sailor. He did one or two Olympic programs in the 49er, and he was Charlie and Jonathan's tuning partner in the 49er. So yeah, really good tactical sailor. Yeah, it's great sailing with him.
So there are a bunch of questions that all kind of fold in here, but to cheat ahead a little bit, you guys go to the Worlds in England in 2016 and you win that. But obviously you've then started up Team Tuesday Norte and sort of replicated that situation, which helps you get through. But fast forwarding again to 2019, Team Tuesday Norte is the podium at the Worlds, but you guys are able to poke out, even just that little bit from your training peers. So like, how are you and Adam debriefing out of that? Like, what's your special sauce mix, like outside of the Team Tuesday within your little 2-person bubble to poke you out even beyond those other people who are freaking awesome?
Yeah. Yeah, so Holty had quite a good run for a few years, and yeah, we were excited to race against him in South Africa, and then there was a shipping strike, and our boat couldn't go there, and
yeah,
that was a bummer. So we were pretty hungry, but yeah. So what keeps us in front of the Team Tuesday? So I think we have a little bit. I mean, years of experience sailing the 5.0 helps, right? And I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of 5.0 sailing. So that helps. And to be blunt, we're quick, right? We're quicker than then our Parker and Eric actually, finally, right before that world, got to the point where, they were just about even with us. And so, yeah, that was good. That's what we want, right? Because that forces us to be quick as well. So I think I just think we have a little bit of a speed advantage just because the number of hours in the 5.0, and then I think, yeah, I don't know, you got to give a lot of credit to Adam, just especially in Frio. Everyone thought it was going to be a go left regatta, and he figured out pretty quickly that wasn't the case. I mean, there was one or two races that was, but most of the races there were some shifts, and there were definitely some shifts coming out of the right that you could make big gains on, and he figured that out pretty early on, and that really helped us sort of tactically, be consistently good at the weather mark.
Yep. So Adam's super tall, but he's not super heavy. You guys as a team are pretty tall. You're probably just north of the bell curve as a driver size, right?
Yeah, I'm 6'2", 180, we'll say.
Okay.
And Adam's 6'6", 200, 205, depending if we're gaining and losing weight. So
yeah.
So we're definitely tall.
Yeah. I mean, I was describing to my girlfriend last night. Oh, I'm talking to this guy Mike tomorrow, and he's a pretty big dude, and then I showed her a picture of you and Adam, and she was like, he doesn't look very big to me. But you get next to 6'6", and you're pretty short anyway. So physically, obviously, people who pay attention to the Facebook Wednesday things will know you're a fan of the hiking pads, and people are sort of, not shy about recognizing your hiking style upwind. But like, how do you guys approach the boat physically? Is it like markedly different from other teams, or are people just like the physicality of sailing the boat seems to be a big strength of yours?
Yeah, I mean, it's a dinghy. It doesn't weigh that much. Yeah, Howie will tell you hiking doesn't make a difference, but I disagree. And my whole life I spent, in hiking boats, and working the boat with your body, and how you trim, how you steer, how you hike. And really, it's not that different from anything else. And so, the hiking pad thing, I think you can just hike harder longer when you have hiking pads, and it also sort of lifts you up a little bit and keeps you higher out of the water.
Yeah.
So you're going to have less kind of wave strikes.
Butt slap.
Yeah.
Okay. So going back to 2016 for a second, you guys must have been feeling pretty good about when you went over there. You had good results beforehand, and then you do the pre-worlds and you do just fine. And then you have the first day of the worlds and you throw up two shockers. So, how do you right the ship after that? What's that dinner time conversation?
Yeah, so we kind of got whipsawed in the beginning of that regatta. Yeah, so the big, local knowledge was you had to go left. And we sailed pretty conservatively. And so the first race, we're like, you know what, we're just going to start in the middle. And that didn't work. Everyone from the left passed us. And so we're like, we learned our lesson there. And so we were like the third boat out of the gate. And rolled Nathan Batchelor, sent him off to the right. And then like a 20-degree righty came in. And in the end, we were sort of the left boat, and this 20-degree righty came in on that beat. And yeah, we just had to eat it the whole way back. I think we were out at the weather mark 80th or something. And I just had to, work our way back. And you know, hey, you know, what are you going to say? These things happen. And so we just said, well, you know, we just used our 2 drop races and we'll start tomorrow. Like it's a new regatta,
right?
With no drops. And yeah, and it also got a little windier, which obviously suits us. And yeah, we're able to get some good scores. And I think going into the last day, we had 20 something point lead. And so yeah, all we had to do is really get top 20. And it started off light, and again we were being conservative, sort of started in the middle of the line and brought the weather mark around 20th or something, and then just slowly worked our way back up the fleet, which was, you know, that's fine. That's our plan.
Yep. So do you, having both done, you know, I mean, you mentioned that Adam was part of Jonathan and Charlie's tuning partner. He and Andy Mack were good in 49ers. Like, you know, you had Morgan and Kevin who were, you know, popping off 2s and 3s at Worlds, like one after the other. And then you have Jonathan and Charlie who decided to beat him at the trials. But Andy and Adam were like right there the whole freaking time. So does that reflect in like how you guys communicate? Like, is there a professionalism that you guys think you sort of naturally bring into your communications and approach to the boat?
Yeah, you know, we're both, I think it's the sort of mindset and philosophy is very similar. And, you know, when bad things happen, we don't dwell on it. We just sort of look for it and how we're going to, you know, work our way forward. And, you know, we take it one race at a time and figure it out. And yeah, we have pretty good communication. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's just similar sailing communication style. And so, yeah, chemistry works well.
Okay. And speaking of bad things happen and large leads going into the end of Worlds, you tried to rip the board out in Frio, and like what, I hadn't heard that until the Sailing World thing came up, and I still don't really understand it. What happened?
Yeah, so we sail up to the first race, or the next to last day, and yeah, we pulled the board up, and we have a bolt-on beak,
right?
G10 beak in the front of the center board. And I think actually what happened is, like a year earlier, we switched jibe stopper styles. We used to have like this lever one, and then we went to the Larry slide up and down one.
Yep.
And you need to cut a notch in it to clear, and we didn't cut the notch and we just put the thing in. So every time we pulled the board up, it was pressing against the jibe stopper, and of course we drive around on the trailer that way, and I think that just slowly wore a slot into the hole in the G10.
Oh,
that's what I'm figuring out in 2020 hindsight. And anyway, yeah. So in this race, we're tuning up upwind, and we go downwind. You know, coming back to the starting line, pull the board up, and the thing just floats up in the case, and it's like. And yeah, we look up and we just see the hole, you know, elongated right outside the edge. And so, yeah, we got this slot. And so we're trying to figure out what to do. But, you know, about this time, the sequence is starting. And there's also a lot of weeds in Frio, which was disappointing because, you know, we usually clear our blade, you know, once a leg or something.
Right.
And anyway, so we just, like, you know, can reach in and we can kind of hook the thing back on the bolt and sort of put it in place. And it was fine upwind, it would hold upwind, but then downwind, you know, you'd go over a couple waves and it would just pop loose.
Right.
So we got the paddle and we just, you know, would like get it in place and then just wedge the paddle, and I'd cleat the main downwind and sit there and hold the paddle with my hand, steering downwind, and Adam would do his thing, sort of wedging the board in place. And then, yeah, we'd get to we jibe and like it would come loose and we'd have to fix it again. And then got to the leeward mark and like have to left head to wind and hook it in and jam it all the way down. And then it would stay for the beat, but then, yeah, downwind. And so we made it through the first race like that. And then, yeah, super generosity and sportsmanship of the fleet. Eric and Parker had a spare board sitting on on the beach, and the whole team, Carl, and he offered to go get it, and so he drove in, got it. We had to fill out this form, and it was all handed the race committee this wet form of
Right.
equipment change request, and switch the board in, and yeah, the only caveat is that board was super fat, so we get it in, but it's you push it down, and that's where it was
Right.
for the race, and so we put it in a halfway between upwind and downwind position, and couldn't clear for weeds, and that's what it was, but it was better than what we had before.
Sure.
And then we managed to get 2/4 that day, and that was good enough to seal the regatta.
That's great.
So the moral of the story is, when you inspect the boat, inspect everything, take the board out, take the mast out.
Yeah, I think Larry might get a few requests for new G10 beaks after this one airs. That'll be the hot new toolbox item. So
I have a spare now.
Yeah, I would guess you do. So that sort of brings us current up to date, since the world kind of hit pause there for COVID. But you guys are obviously planning to go to Bermuda and do all that stuff this year. So how does your year plan out for you this year in 2021?
Yeah, so the plan is, we're trying to get this crazy shipping plan together, which isn't easy because of the whole shipping industry is a mess, but it's actually starting to come together. I think we found a container, and I think we have 9 boats now, and we're gonna go to the NAs in Newport, and then reload the container and go to Bermuda. And by the way, East Coasters watching this, we need more East Coasters going to Bermuda. The numbers I see are quite low. That's unacceptable. So you guys get your asses in gear. It's just right off your coast. So we need you to go to Bermuda. And then from there, it's going to go to Florida, because word on the street is the next NAs are in Clearwater in February. And then it'll go back to the West Coast. And then, actually only a few months later, we'll be loading it to go to Cork, Ireland. So,
okay.
That's what the 5.0 program looks like.
That's a good program. So, but then in the more immediate future, you're going to spend a couple of weeks racing foil kites in LA?
Yeah. So after the Cup, it was pretty clear that foiling was the future of sailing, and I wanted to learn to foil in something. And I looked at the options, and there was a couple foiling cats, but they were terribly expensive and hard to maintain. And there was a moth, but a moth weighs 60 pounds and has more fittings than a 5.0, if that's possible. And then there was the foiling kiteboard. The foiling kiteboard, has 0 moving parts, and the fleet here in San Francisco, Johnny Heinegan was a world champion. His sister was a world champion, and there was at that time 14-year-old girl that was kicking everyone's butt, and so you had the best fleet in the world, and they raced on a regular basis. So I got a foiling kiteboard and started doing that, which was an extremely humbling experience. I'd been kiting for 10 years anyway, but it was also, we were learning on the kind of primitive equipment and pretty unstable race gear, but it's a lot of fun. The things are impressive. In 10 knots of breeze, you'll do about 23 knots upwind and tack through 85 degrees and do 35 knots downwind.
Wow.
So.
And how, since you're the alt rules expert of the podcast so far, are the rules, how much are they tailored to the unique situations that you encounter in foiling, or is it pretty much the same rules?
No, it's pretty much the same. There's an appendix F, which is for kiting.
Right. Yep.
And there's a couple differences, and some of them are kind of frightening. Like when Rule 18, which is the Romita mark rule, doesn't apply between boats on opposite tacks ever. So upwind or downwind. So if you're coming into a leeward gate, port starboard, there's no, if you're on port, you have no room. So
Right.
it's just plain old port starboard.
Okay.
But yeah, generally the rules are close enough to the same that it's no big deal.
Cool. All right.
You can hit the leeward mark if you want.
That's so I've done a bunch of Marstrom 32, now called M32 sailing with Allery, and hitting the mark artfully and securely is one of the most fun things about those things. You just like whack it. We keep trying to drive over it with the hulls, but they always use marks that are too big. But I don't see why you can't hit marks anymore. I mean, it's just like, I don't know. I think it's funny. So great.
Yeah, in kiting, you're not allowed to hit the weather mark.
Oh, really?
That's just because you'll get hung up on it. You'll border
Right.
get hung up on it, and then you have a big mess.
Yeah.
But you can hit the leeward mark, but usually you don't want to hit the leeward mark because you're going 30 knots, and
Yeah.
it'll knock you down. So you wind up not hitting a lot of marks.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have a rack to pick up and like get it out of the way. We do that a lot in Cat. Awesome. All right. So this has been a super fun conversation, but we have the two sort of standing questions left to go. And I'll tell you the same thing that I've told everybody else. Everybody since day one has cheated on this question. So you can have like, 2 or 2+. Best day or best memory in a 5-0?
Yeah, obviously there's so many. Every world twin, and but in particular, I remember in 09. In 09 we broke our mast the first day of the Worlds, and so we were just grinding to get back, and of course Holty was all over us. And then crossing the line and winning the last race by half a leg, and the gun going off just still sends shivers down my spine. And I have a picture of it, a great shot right here. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah.
And there's this smoke. You can see the smoke out of the shotgun right there.
Right.
And actually, they gave us the shotgun shell, so that's in the other room.
Perfect.
Bigger picture, but yeah, I'll always remember that one. And then I think the other one that really stands out wasn't even racing. It was just we were out training one day in San Francisco Bay, and it was a windy day, even by San Francisco standards. And it was also like a 4-knot flood, and so the water is smooth,
Pan flat, yeah.
Waves this high,
right,
flat and blowing 30. And when we get up, when we sail upwind and we sort of get to the bridge where it gets particularly windy, and we go to bear away and go to bear away and what? Nope. And it took us 3 or 4 tries to bear away. And we finally get the thing away and get the kite up and just take off, 30 knots of breeze, flat water, all the way in the back of the bus, just absolutely sending it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's, not even racing. It's just they're fun boats to sail and rip around in. So that's, those are my 2.
Good choices. I like it. All right. And then take us home with the who's the next guest?
Yeah, so there's been quite a variety of people. But I thought about this quite a bit. And both these people have sailed 5-0 regattas, but they've spent a lot more time watching 5-0s than they have sailing them, but I think they will have some awesome insights to the fleet and to the boats. And that's, I don't know if it's legit to do a twofer, but Jay and PZ Glacier is my pick.
I think that's a fantastic pick, and we'll, I mean, you're the rules guy and I make the rules for this, so we'll call it good. And I think it'll be easy and fun to make that work, and they'll be, I've thought about having those guys on, and I think it would be awesome. So great choice. So that wraps us up. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Thank you for sharing so much with everybody, and the leadership, and it's just great to have people like you and Adam around, and I'll see you in Newport, if not before.
Okay, great. And thanks so much for doing this. And also, I'm a little upset we didn't get to do any bike talk and all this.
Oh,
but
yeah.
We'll
So we have plenty of time for that. But for anybody listening, Ethan, and I've been remiss on sending this out on Facebook and whatever else, Ethan Bixby has set up a 505 class Strava group, so we can all sandbag each other and say how slow we are and how much we're not riding, and we can get BS called on that. But yes, there's definitely there's got to be the cycling episode of the podcast. It will come before too long.
Yeah, maybe a group call, and we can all BS about bike stories.
I think we need to do that. Good idea. All right, Mike, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your 4th of July weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks so much.
Great. Bye.